Good morning, everyone. Joe Krolikowski here. Welcome to our presentation. In terms of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to unpack why certification audits are done in two stages. We're going to kind of go all the way to the beginning of the process with how we quote a new company and try to unpack some of why we do the things that we do at the very beginning of the process. We'll talk about some of the steps that happen prior to the audit after you become a PJR client. We'll take you through the stage one audit process front to back, give you a sense of what's going to happen and why. We'll talk a little bit about what are some of the things that can come up on a stage one that would be an impediment to continuing on to stage two, along with some recommendations that we have for you. And as Isabel mentioned, we do have some time at the end for any questions that you have. So let's get started. Now, in terms of why it is done in two stages, if you want to be kind of to the point, we do it this way because we are required to do it this way. PJR is an accredited certification body. Worldwide, we have over 10 accreditations in different programs. One of the more important documents that we are held accountable to when the accreditation bodies audit us is a document called ISO 17021-1. Now, that document includes a provision that reads as follows. The initial certification audit of a management system shall be conducted in two stages, stage one and stage two. Now, historically, this was introduced as a requirement to try to make sure that only companies that were truly ready for certification were having the benefit of the certification audit. As you can imagine, a stage two audit is a long process depending on how many employees you have. There's a certain amount of investment of resources on the part of the certification body. So they want to make sure that you're ready. It would be foolish for you to have a certification audit and within a few hours of the first day to be told that you're not ready to continue and then be out all of that time and money. So obviously, before we can perform a stage one audit at your facility, you do have to be a PJR contracted client. Now, we use a series of scope-specific applications under the document number F1 or Form 1 to help facilitate that process. Now, again, we have multiple F1 documents. We have one, for example, for our IETF automotive program. We have one that is specific to our recycling programs. We have one that is specific to our 37001 program. And each one has nuances within it that are intended to gather a multitude of information. A lot of people tell us that our applications are a little bit complicated. Well, that's by design. We ask for a lot of information up front because we want to make sure that we are giving you as competitive a quotation as we possibly can. If we get detailed responses to you up front, we can avoid potential logistical or readiness issues or challenges later on down the road. Now, speaking of audit duration, you may or may not be aware that's actually something that is dictated to us also. So if we're talking about ISO 9001, that is under what we call the International Accreditation Forum Mandatory Document, or IAF-MD number 5. That document stipulates how much audit time we can assign based on your head count. And it also gives us guidelines that we have to follow in terms of discounting. So we mention this because, you know, if you're comparing certification bodies, obviously you want to work with someone that's going to work with you and not just gouge you. But you need to be very careful if you have 2 or 3 certification bodies that you're looking at, and one of them is giving you an audit duration that is just dramatically different from what the other 2 are providing you. It's possible that that rogue certification body is straying away from MD5, which may mean that they are not accredited. So be careful about how you approach that. Now, MD5, incidentally, is a public domain document. You can obtain it for yourself at the IAF website, or if you just go to Google and do a Google search for IAF MD5, you can download a copy of it for yourself. Now, once you are our client, you will be assigned to what we refer to as an audit program coordinator. You will probably come to know this person as your scheduler. Now, the scheduler is going to be your primary point of contact. They will obviously let you know the dates of the audit. They're going to make sure that you've turned in any paperwork that you're required to turn in. And they're going to help you find an auditor that is both qualified in your standard and competent in your technical area. Now, obviously, our schedulers work very hard to provide someone that is close by. We recognize that travel, especially nowadays, is very expensive, but sometimes we do have to bring in auditors from other states to cover your type of business. Now, once we've got an arrangement made in terms of who's going to be doing the stage 1 audit and when, you will be sent a document called the F108, or Attestation of Readiness. This is basically a document that says, are you ready for this stage 1? So let's unpack what goes on this F108 document. Now, as I mentioned, this is basically an attestation of readiness. This is your organization going down the line of all the things that you have to be prepared to present during the stage 1 audit. And it's a yes/no checklist. It basically says, have you performed a management review? Yes. Have you performed an internal audit? Yes, and so forth. And there are a number of other things that you are prompted for on this F108. Have you determined what your scope is for your system? Do you know what your processes are? Do you understand how those processes interact with each other? Do you know what your key performance indicators are? Do you have data for those key performance indicators? Have you had your internal audit, and have you taken steps to make sure that you have competency records for your internal auditors? Have you had your management review? And has it covered all of the required topics? Have you considered your outsourced processes and how you're controlling those? Same with statutory and regulatory requirements. Do you have all the documentation that you're supposed to have? And have you prepared your PJR form F191? Now, that last one is optional, but we do highly recommend it. I'll be giving you some details on it on our next slide. Now, our F191 historically has been a point of confusion for many of our clients. Now, this is something else that you will be sent by your scheduler at the point that we're putting everything together for you. Now, what it is intended to do is to make sure that whatever processes you've established represent a fulfillment of all the clauses of the applicable standard. Now, the intent is for you to document what your processes are using your IOP and then assigning the clause numbers accordingly. So let's walk you through an example of how this should work. So let's pretend that this is your IOP. And as you can see in the lower left-hand corner here, this organization has 6 named processes. So those 6 processes are here, and we're going to take those 6 processes and organize them on PJR form F191. So let's do that now. Okay, so as you can see on the left-hand side here, we've got our 6 processes, and down the grid here, we have assigned clause numbers to each of these processes. Now, some of them For example, clause 7.5, because that clause includes requirements for records control and documentation control, it is concluded that that clause impacts all processes. The process named support, it has been concluded that support represents a fulfillment of all of the clause numbers, which is reasonable given what was written under that support process. You'll also note that clause 8.3 has been left blank in this particular preparation. We would obviously take that to mean that this organization is not responsible for the design of the products that it's manufacturing. So there's a lot that we can take from this, but the most important thing we can take from this is that the organization has implemented a set of processes that collectively represent a fulfillment of all of the clauses of ISO 9001. So on audit day, in terms of what happens in the beginning and at the very end, our stage 1 audits are typically going to be conducted either on-site or virtually. Now, we do offer what we call an off-site stage 1 audit, and that is possible in some situations where we're talking about a simple ISO 9001 management system. If that is something that you're potentially going to be pursuing, understand that it's potentially going to end up meaning more overall audit time, based on the fact that MD5 specifies on-site audit time. It's a little bit complicated. If that's something that you're going to be looking at, send us an email, give us a call, and we'll walk you through how it's going to impact your particular situation. But on-site and virtual are the most popular options. They both count in terms of fulfilling the MD5 audit time requirements. You should expect to be contacted by your auditor at least a few days in advance of the stage 1 audit, whether it's being done on-site or not. And you should expect to receive an audit plan. It is important, just like any other audit plan that you get, you need to confirm that the information shown on the audit plan is correct and to advise your auditor if it isn't correct. Now, the audit begins, like any other audit, with an opening meeting. This is a good chance for you to confirm any last-minute changes and details and to ensure that your auditor is aware of any critical information, any visitors that you're expecting to have, key personnel availability issues, anything like that. And from there, the stage 1 audit will proceed according to the auditor's audit plan. Now, our stage 1 audits are unique in that we have a dedicated set of workbooks just for the stage 1 audits. All of our other audits, stage 2, surveillance, recertification, we have a unified workbook that covers those audit types. But the stage 1 is so unique that it warrants its own special workbook. Now, just about everything that we look at in the stage 1 audit is documentation based in nature. And everything results in one of two conclusions. Either the item is marked as conforms or the item is marked as a concern. Now, a concern is going to be anything that represents a disconnect between what you've implemented and the related requirements from the applicable standard. Now, once the auditor has completed their review of the required materials, they're going to need some time to prepare their audit report. Another interesting thing about stage 1 audits, there are no nonconformances in a stage 1 audit. Once the report is issued, there will be a closing meeting to discuss the results. Now, there are a few possible outcomes of a stage 1 audit. The ideal outcome is a recommendation for continuance to stage 2 with no concerns. Alternatively, there may be a recommendation for continuance to stage 2 with very minor concerns. Now, that's probably the most common outcome that we see, that second one. There are times where there are going to be some things that are going to represent an impediment to continuing to stage 2. And that's where we get into these last two options. It is possible that we can't recommend to continue to stage 2, but there are the items that are delinquent are such that it can be handled by PJR headquarters in a correspondence fashion in order for those issues to be resolved. And we'll get into some examples of what that means. Now, the last possibility is obviously the least desirable. It is possible that there is so much out of kilt that we have to redo the whole stage 1 over again. That is a rare instance. It does not happen very often, but it does occasionally happen. Now, you will be asked to assign an acknowledgement of the stage 1 results, and you will be given a copy of the completed audit report. Now, sometimes if there is rather tight travel arrangements that have been made and so forth, it may be a few additional days before you receive your finalized audit report, but particularly in the case of a stage 1 audit, we strive to have our auditors provide that report the same day or certainly no later than the very next day. Now, in terms of things that can represent an impediment to continuing on to stage 2, let's go through the list of items here and kind of outline some of the things that you should be doing here. First of all, if you don't have an effective interaction of processes, if you've got something that was given to you by a consultant that bears no resemblance to what your actual processes are, if you have an IOP that is a recreation of the PDCA diagram from ISO 9001, or something else that is just ineffective, all of these things can lead the auditor to conclude that you don't know what your processes are. And if you don't know what your processes are, you can't continue on to stage 2. Now, if this is something that you've not gotten your arms around, we encourage you to use our other webinar. We have a very popular webinar on this topic. It's called Interaction of Processes and Its Importance to a Successful Audit. We've been presenting it for years, and it's been very well received. So if you're still getting your system put together and you need some help on the IOP, I encourage you to check that other webinar out. Understand that having an effective, well-written IOP is probably the single best indicator that you understand the process approach that's prescribed by ISO 9001. Second item, if you have not done an effective job of determining your process measures or gathering up your process performance data. Now, bear in mind that ISO 9001 and many other similar standards require you to monitor, measure where applicable, and analyze your processes. So it is our expectation that every process on your IOP be monitored or measured in some fashion. And also, there has to be performance data to show that you're actually doing the monitoring and measurement. Now, some standards have minimum requirements for the amount of data that has to be available. Good example of that is in IETF 16949, which requires that you have 12 months of performance data. For other standards, the expectation is going to be that you have enough evidence available to demonstrate that the process is working. Now, some organizations we have seen will use a few measures of effectiveness that cover all processes. That is generally considered acceptable. If you have a metric that you feel reflects on multiple processes or even all processes, that is considered acceptable. Another area that we see issues is if there are inadequate internal auditor competency records. Now, you are required to determine competency requirements for all of the functions within your quality system, including for the people conducting internal audits. Now, we need to see proof that whoever did your internal audit meets those competency requirements. Now, again, certain standards and industries require additional provisions be made for internal auditor competency. On that theme, let's talk about the internal audit requirement. Now, this is something that in recent years, as you can see, we had to kind of shift our rhetoric on how we were approaching this. So in terms of the expectations, we need to see evidence that internal audits are a planned activity. Now, it's up to you what that means. We need to see evidence that there is auditing taking place. There needs to be notes or reports or what have you that reflect that all of your processes were included in the internal audit. We need to see evidence that any nonconformances that are discovered are documented and that you've taken an appropriate response to those identified nonconformities. Also, you need to make sure that your internal auditors are not auditing their own work. Now, as of 2022, we were forced to take a much harsher line on this. Any client that cannot demonstrate that they've done the full, complete internal audit will not be recommended for continuance to stage 2. And that is a firm requirement. If you're halfway done at the time of the stage 1, you need to send us evidence that you've done the rest of it before we can allow the stage 2 to proceed. That same mindset is taken when it comes to management review as well. Now, obviously, the standard requires a long list of things to discuss within the management review meeting process, and our expectation is that you have covered all of those required topics. Now, if you are the type of organization that keeps PowerPoint slides, we see this a lot, that's fine, but bear in mind you need to be prepared to show evidence of what the results of your discussion were. Again, we are required to make sure that you have covered all of the required topics. So when we show up for stage 1, if you have only done a portion of the required management review meeting, we cannot approve you to continue to stage 2 until you've hit the rest of those required topics. Now, the stage 1 audit report, when it is finished, it is turned in to PJR headquarters, and it's subject to review by a member of our executive committee to make sure that the decisions reached are appropriate and fair. Now, you are afforded the right to issue a dispute or appeal of an auditor's decision. Now, that process is discussed in PJR Procedure Pro 10, which is available anytime on our website under Registration Document Download. Now, if the recommendation is to repeat the stage 1 audit, you will still get your audit report, and we encourage you to work from that audit report to shore up all of the issues that were raised. You're obviously allowed to stay in contact with both your auditor and the team here at PJR headquarters to discuss your remediation efforts and to make sure that you're on the right path to a better result. You will be getting a contract amendment from PJR for the repeat stage 1 audit. In most cases, it's going to end up meaning a rescheduling of your stage 2 audit, obviously. And incidentally, this is why we strongly recommend a minimum of 30 days between stage 1 and stage 2, because it's not a guarantee that the stage 1 is going to go well. Bear in mind, we do have a 21-day cancellation policy with fees applied if you're canceling with less than 21 days to go. And more than once, we have seen back-to-back stage 1 and stage 2 audits leading to significant issues. Now, if the recommendation is that there are significant issues, but a repeat stage 1 isn't going to be needed, this is where you're going to be working with someone from PJR headquarters, somebody from our executive committee. And that person will reach out to you and say, okay, for example, I see that you've not had a complete management review meeting. I need you to send me those items. so that I can close this out and approve you for continuance to stage 2. Now, again, if you are proceeding to stage 2, congratulations, but still look over that report. If there's any items of concern, of low-level concern, those items aren't just going to go away. You want to be paying attention to those items and responding appropriately so that they don't become nonconformances on stage 2. Now, in conclusion, we want our clients to feel confident and comfortable proceeding through the stage 1 audit and continuing on to stage 2. We do feel that the care that's taken in the pre-stage 1 phase and the mutual support of both your auditor and our executive committee, they work great to make this process as seamless as possible. And we do wish you every success in your certification journey. I'd like to invite you to tune in for one of our other webinars. We have a presentation on ISO 9001 called Knowing What to Expect to Ensure a Stress-Free Audit. This is an unpacking of some of the more common issues that come up during an ISO 9001 audit and give some ideas of what our expectations are. We have, as I mentioned, our special presentation on the interaction of processes, and we have webinars on a wide variety of other topics. IETF 16949, 14001, and so forth. If you'd like to be kept informed of the latest news automatically, the best way for you to do that is to visit our website at www.pjr.com. If you go to the bottom of the home page, enter your email address into the provided space and click subscribe, you will be opted in for automatic updates on new webinars, changes to the standard, and other helpful points of information. I do thank everyone for their time. I hope this has been a helpful presentation for you.